はい、それでは IntelliJ IDEA ヒントとトリックおよび例文関連のアップデートを始めたいと思います。So please welcome Mikhail.
Can I probably get my screen here for the laptop? Thank you. So I'm going to give you a session around IntelliJ and IntelliJ IDEA-based IDEs. Do you use IntelliJ, PHPStorm, WebStorm, PyCharm, any of their IntelliJ-based tools? Good. So I'm going to be focusing the next half an hour on all their new features which we have there. So a new version of IntelliJ is going to be released just in a week or so in November. So it's really coming very soon. And I've seen that WebStorm is already there. And I would like to show you an overview of what's coming there. And to start with, I would actually show you the Toolbox. How many of you know the Toolbox app? Raise your hand. Good. Almost a half, 40%. So the Toolbox app is an app which is shipped for free by JetBrains, and you can use it in order to manage all the installation of all the JetBrains tools, different IDs. So as you see here, I use like CLine, DataGrip, Goland, IntelliJ of different versions. And this tool basically manages all of those, and there are different installations and lets you keep a few copies. So one of the reasons I'm showing you that is that Toolbox is one of the best ways to install what we call early access program, or EAP builds of IntelliJ and other products. In this case, you have an access to all the new features about 2 months in advance before we actually release them. So for the last 2 months, you already have an access to the new a new version of IntelliJ. And a couple of things which are coming in the Toolbox app itself. So in addition to what we had before, we also can organize our projects here. So you can add the projects to your favorites or hide them from Toolbox app so that you don't have them anymore. And the list of projects lets you basically navigate to them really quickly. And the next thing, which is very useful, is automatic updates. So you can install updates automatically as soon as they are available in the background, so that it does not distract you by their need to go to the Toolbox and click the button to update it. And if you don't use Toolbox, this option is also available in the IDE itself. So you can do there as well. Okay, let's get to the IDE. And in fact, one of the things which is going to help you today, in the bottom of the screen, it's going to tell you what shortcuts or hotkeys I'm using in the IDE, because a lot of things we promote in the IDE in IntelliJ is that you can do a lot of actions without using your mouse. I'll be using mouse today for some educational purposes, but in general, you can do almost everything in the IDE without touching the mouse. And in order not to ask me what's going to be the shortcut on Windows or Linux, you have this box in the bottom which shows you it's going to be that shortcut. And if you would like to use it in your own presentations, then that's something we call a presentation assist. So presentation assistant is a plugin which is going to show you that if you do presentations inside the company, for example. And while we're here, I want to show you one of the things which are coming in their next version of IntelliJ. And it's loading. I hope it will load, because my internet is a bit slow. But that's a new redesigned version of their plugin repository inside the IDE. So that's the place where you can manage all your plugins and their updates to those plugins and so on. So if I would have more stable internet, you would see the featured plugins here as well. And just to set the mood, there are a lot of different features with IntelliJ. And it's one of those you maybe don't see often. Let's set background image, and this unicorn is kind of setting the mood for the evening. So I hope we are going to have a great time here, but probably I would remove it so that it does not distract you too much while we are here in the editor. And I'm not going to be showing you much of their stuff we had in the IDE for years today, but there is an amazing place where you can find a lot of tips and tricks similar to those I'm going to be showing you today about the new features. For their other features, you can go to Help, probably their menu nobody ever goes to, and then go to the Productivity Guide. And then you will see statistics of what features do you use in the IDE and those you never use. So you basically have all the information, and the directory div, for example, I never used in my IDE, and there you can explore it on Friday evening and go through all the things and make sure that you use more and more features of IntelliJ so that you can become even more productive using the IDE. And the way I navigate is search everywhere or double shift. And it's got some updates in their newest version as well. So before we had this search everywhere, and also we would have dedicated search dialogues, something like search for file or search for classes. But now we basically merged all of that in a single search everywhere. So here we got the filtering instead of their separate dialogues. We got the filters. So basically the ultimate navigation action is double shift. And then you start typing. And if you'd like to switch between filters, let's say you know that you need only actions, then you use tab to switch between those. And of course, all shortcuts, for example, navigate to files still work, and they're going to get you to double shift. And another thing which we got here is you don't need slash anymore when you navigate through the folders. So before that was one of the really wanted features by developers, so that you can just start typing like one folder, then space, and go to analysis and so on, so that you don't need to put the slashes here. And then from the developers of Search Everywhere, there is also a new thing, which is run anything. Well, it does what it says. It runs anything. For example, you can just get their Maven commands or Gradle tasks and their projects which you've been recently working on as well, and you can just run them from here. Works for run debug configurations as well. Another thing is that you can use replace in path here as a command shift R, and you basically provide search and replace in this single dialog. And then another thing which you can do is you can do now multi-line. So before you could do single line, now you can do multi-line for both search and replace patterns. And it might be very convenient if you're looking for some particular multi-line commands or something like that. We added some additional actions in the IDE. So one of those is, for example, open recent. So you can assign the shortcut for that. And you basically go through the recent projects right here. You don't need to go to your file, open recent, or even close your current editor and go and navigate there. And another one is that we have the manage projects as well. So that's something we had basically on the welcome screen. Now we have it in the IDE as well. And there's something which has been created, which has been added to the IDE a bit longer time ago, is that you can create groups. Let's say create your project group Tokyo, and then manage projects. Should get us Tokyo, yeah, Tokyo. And then we can move to the group Tokyo, and we can create different groups, let's say like hobby projects or work projects, and organize them there at the welcome screen and in the IDE itself. And by the way, if something is not working, that's still early access version of the IDE. So maybe there will be some glitches, but I hope not many. Another thing which got a lot of interest from our developers this time is support for different screen readers, and they're making sure that they're physically challenged. You can also access the IDE. So basically, we introduced the high contrast theme as well, and their high contrast theme is designed specifically for the cases when you have issues with other themes. And there is also support for screen readers, as I said, and also their different kinds of color blindness and red-green vision deficiency, for example. So it's a special themes which can be used inside the IDE now to allow better access. Then for quite some time, we had a kind of Postman inside IDE. So you probably used Postman at some point. And there in the IDE, for about 2 or 3 years, we have this testing RESTful APIs client, and that's the place where you would basically go and choose their HTTP method. You would provide some host, port, path, request, all kind of headers you would like to get here, and values, and then you would run the REST client. Okay, I don't have anything running here, but instead of this kind of wizard dialog style, we also created a new one, which is more code-based. And that's where you just go, get connection. You get all the completion here, and after that, you just run it. You get the results right here, so you don't need any interface. You don't need to click anything. Again, everything can be done in the code. And then, if we run it again, we get two results. Well, you can view those results just as files. So if it's JSON, it's going to be JSON. If it's HTML, it's going to be HTML file. Temporary files which are saved in your project. But then you can compare them as well. So let's say you have some REST API and you're working on this REST API, and you're trying to make sure that it returns you the correct response, and then you basically introduce the changes to your API. Then you run the REST request, and then you can compare those and see the difference in the standard difference viewer of the IDE. So this one has been introduced there a bit earlier, I think last version, but it gives you a very good support for REST. And in fact, one of the things you get it is that you can use HTTP or REST file extension for a file. And one of the ways to use it is creating a scratch files. So the scratch files are temporary files which are not part of your project in the IDE. So you basically create them. Let's say if you like to test some solutions from Stack Overflow, or for example, do some temporary HTTP requests, and you just start typing, and this file is not going to be saved into your project by default unless you explicitly move it. Then you probably know that we have Postfix Completion. That's a completion you invoke in this case, like that. So you just use tab, or for example, for new, you use tab, and there it's just postfix means that it's after something. So after the foo, I have new tab. It's being created. So for a few versions already, we had it, but now the custom postfix completion are coming. So you basically can create your own postfix completion in the IDE, and there you can define those which you've been always missing in IntelliJ or any other IntelliJ-based IDEs. So here, for example, I have support for JavaScript, Java, SQL, and TypeScript, and PHP, and depends also on plugins which you have installed. So you basically can start defining your postfix here, set the minimum language level so that your completion mechanism know when it needs to offer you this particular postfix template, and then you can save it, and then you can use it for the language you're working with. Another thing which we got is, well, probably you know that we have these to-do commands. So you, for example, say to-do fix this, and you get a special view for those to-do commands right here, and you can view them before committing and so on. And before, it was not possible to do them multi-line. So for example, you would not be able to see that Hadi should fix it in the next session. Now you can do multi-line. So you just do indentation, you add indentation to the second line or third line, and say that Masaru fix it in the next session to you, and learn Kotlin. So yeah, and you see it right here. And then, for example, if you do the commit, then you say check to do, and it's going to show you, okay, like those to do you have unresolved, probably you would like to resolve those here. So now you can provide more information. Of course, it is not going to replace your issue tracker or something like that, but you can provide more technical information there so that your colleagues see that in a special view. We got new indentation settings here in the bar on the right bottom of the IDE. So here you can, for example, switch whether you would like to indent new lines with tab or with 4 spaces. So it's very easy to switch now when you cannot decide whether you would like to use tabs or spaces. And then you can reindent the whole file with tabs or spaces. And of course, you can do all the configurations here in the code style for Java. But it's basically what we did is that we redesigned the way how you work with this switcher, and it gets more options, and it's more convenient to work with it now. And by the way, I've been showing you find and replace, and of course, for the find in path, the changes are kind of similar. You can do multi-line search in path, so also might be very convenient. In addition to search and replace, of course. These both dialogues are basically synchronized now, and you can do similar stuff in both. Then I wanted to show you something about data flow. So for the data flow, you probably know how we would work with it in the previous version. We would do analyze data flow from here for the whole project, and it would give you information on reading and writing all the stuff here related to the ID. So it would go through the whole data flow up to this point, or from this point, and there it would give you the information, the analysis. But there is even better way to do that now. Let me show that. Something we introduced in the new version of IntelliJ. So let's say that we would like to get the data flow for this object, and we use a shortcut command Control-Shift-P, basically your data flow for expression, and you can say what expression we would like to evaluate. In this case, we would like to evaluate the object, and you see it tells me it's an object. But if we do second Control-Shift-P, it's going to tell me the constraints. So it checks their data flow, and it tells me the constraints. And there, let's see why you might want to have it. So here, for example, I have if with different values and their constraints. So it should be bigger, smaller, and so on. So let's do data flow analysis on their int value. Second time, it tells me the range. So you get the range here. It got the analysis up to this point of the system out println int value, and it gets me their data flow analyzed range. And there, even better, you can then use it in the inspections. Well, inspections basically would use those. So for example, this one tells you that the call get always fails because the index is out of bounds. And that's basically something which we got thanks to data flow analysis inside the IDE. Very powerful to investigate what's happening there, and there gives you a lot of insights. Then the duplicate detector. Location for duplicates. For Java, we got better and more standard difference viewer here. So you can view all the differences right from here, side by side or unified. And in fact, you would get the same viewer in the inspections. For duplicate inspections, you would be able to see that, and you will be able to switch the file. If there are a couple of files with duplicates, you would be able to switch between those as well. So then probably a bit of information about what happened to the VCS. One of my favorite features ever of the VCS integration, which has been introduced, I think, in the last version, is partial commit. So for example, here I have a file with a few changes, and you see that next to each change, I see a checkbox. So I can say that I would like to commit only a couple of changes out of the whole file. And there, for example, if you've been working on something, let's say you've been introducing a few different changes, and you would like to commit only those which are related to your single feature or single bug. So you can just do that. You go to the file, and right in the commit dialog, you can choose what are you going to work with. And then, of course, those which you have not checked in the VCS, they're going to be in the active change list anyways, and you will submit them later. Then a few words on the on some other VCS-related GitHub integrations. So, because many of the users would use a few GitHub accounts, that's something we added in IntelliJ as well. So you're able to use a few accounts, just adding them here. And for example, if you have a work account and they're your personal account, then you can just use it in the same ID. You can just add your secrets and they're just stored here. And by the way, if you're using two-factor authorization, it will get a token for you, and you will just need to use their authorization with their username and password once, because then you will be authorizing by their access key and permanent token from GitHub. Talking about GitHub, one of the things we got is pull request. Here we go. I have logged into my account, and I have connection to one of their Git repositories. That's the one we are giving samples at. And there I have one GitHub pull request. So right now you can view the information. You cannot merge. You cannot create. You cannot work with this. So the one thing you can do is create a new local branch and then merge it to master. It would work, but you would not be able to close the pull request or auto merge or something like that. It is coming in the next version. So we started with viewing. And for viewing, already you see all the changes, information, description, and of course the difference of the files. So you get it all here. Then still you would have to go to their to GitHub. So open out GitHub and there merge the pull request there, or otherwise, yeah, you can basically check out this revision and merge it into master yourself here. Then continuing with the VCS, we have this history up to here. Oh, let's find a better example, probably something older. Data flow, history up to here. So you can get history for the file up to some particular revision or state of the file, so that you understand what has been happening. And now you can do that multi-branch as well, to show it in all branches, because your colleagues might have been working with that in some other branch, and you would like to see what has been happening with this file as well. Another issue we have, another thing we have for many years is annotation, and in the next version, my colleagues have worked on the annotations quite significantly. So you've got quite a lot of different options. For example, an option to ignore white spaces or to detect movements within the file or just across all the files. And then from here you can select it in the Git log. And here, let me find where is that. Oh. Okay. Okay, so you can work with annotations. You get all of that here, all the things, and you can also annotate revisions right from here, and it's going to open those for you, and of course navigate to the whole log and so on. Then for the annotated line, you can do different actions as well. So for example, here I have for a line, and in the VCS operations pop-up, I have a special menu which is now going to show you more options, even if you don't have their annotations enabled. So you can do it right here. And by the way, one of the things we introduced as well is Git submodules. That's something we've been asked many times for. So now you can use Git submodules right inside IntelliJ, so there is support for them. And also in this version, there is a new better support for Git hooks. Then I wanted to show you a couple of inspections, because you probably know that we add a lot of new inspections every version of IntelliJ, and Since last version, we actually created a special filter in the settings. So you can go there and you can say, okay, I would like to see all their new inspections in TO 18.3. And that's exactly what we're doing here. And I can show you a couple of them. The first one relates to redundant code. So this particular one relates to their duplicated values here. So if I add happy, it's going to tell me that I do have duplicate, and it's basically redundant. And I can navigate between them and then remove one of them because it is redundant and not needed in this particular case. Then I wanted to show you some things related to the streams, and that's also related to the inspections and their quick fixes. So quick fixes are basically their fixes which are based on the inspections. So for many of the inspections, we have something which is invoked with their Alt-Enter, which is show intended actions, or perform the quick fix, which gives you different options to do here. And for the stream API, we have an amazing thing which can basically replace the stream API chain with loop if you like to get it for better readability, for example. So you just get this inspection and it's going to transform it. But if you're working with streams, another thing which would be very useful is a stream debugger. So let me show how it's going to work. Let's debug this file. So we have a stream call here. And you probably know that it's quite complicated to work with streams in terms of debugging because there are so many things you actually perform there. So what we can do is that we can do stream trace, and it's going to show you the tracking of the variables on every step of the stream. And you can see there flat mode to see what has been happening with the array, for example, in this case. So this one is an amazing feature for their stream debugging in IntelliJ. Then a couple of other things. So we introduced the activity monitor. It's just not as nice as it could look like, but it's going to be improved in terms of user experience and their UI in the next version. But that's the first start to analyze what actually gets your CPU. So there are some plugins or some modules of the IDE which might be affecting the performance, and they're similarly to their activity monitors in your operating system or in Chrome, for example. We show you what is currently happening in the IDE and what is getting your CPU and might affect performance. But then, as I said, it's going to be improved quite significantly as well. And one more thing which I wanted to show you is new structural search and replace. So that's the thing which help you perform very complicated search and replace. If you would like to do the replace, you can do that as well, and you can introduce variables here. And before, there would be only a few people in the world who can understand it and who can write those search and replace structurally code snippets. Now it's much easier, and you get all their completion here as well. So, for example, right now, yeah. So you can just start typing, and you get all the completion from your project. So it's much easier to write those, and you also have additional filters with the script. And you can save templates and share templates as well. Then on the IDE side, there are a few other new additions. So for example, there is a JVM profiler bundled with an IDE. And then, of course, there are a lot of updates to Spring, Scala, Android, Kotlin, and many other languages which are supported by the IDE. And of course, all their updates coming from their WebStorm, PHPStorm, and other IDEs based on IntelliJ platform. There is refined Docker and Kubernetes support. So a lot of things are happening there in the cloud. So JetBrains has integrated a lot of those tools inside its IDEs. And you can get support for all of those in IntelliJ and other products. And then there is support for Vue.js and some other new JavaScript frameworks which you can find on the market already. So with that, my time is up, and I thank you for coming here to JetBrains Night Tokyo, and it's very good to see you here. Thank you. And I believe now is a tea break. Is it correct? Tea break.